Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to give folks just another minute or so to get settled. I know everyone is Zooming from one Zoom to the next these days, and so want to give people a chance to log on and get situated, and then we will kick off our discussion today. All right, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our conversation today on tips and tools for using ARP-HCY funds to support students experiencing homelessness. This is a part of a mini series that Schoolhouse Connection is offering in the coming weeks to help you make the most of those ARP-HCY funds. I am thrilled to be joined today not only by Schoolhouse Connection's Executive Director, Barbara Duffield, but also by Leslie Navarro Walker from Cherry Creek, Colorado, and Kathy Shuffle in Fairfax, Virginia. We'll turn to them in just a few minutes, but first I wanted to offer some housekeeping tips and overviews. First, this webinar will last 1 hour today. We are recording this session and we will post it on our archived webinars page after. And we ask that as you're listening to our fabulous presenters, that you please type any questions you might have for them or for us into the Q&A box. We're hoping to have a good, robust discussion towards the end of today's session and would love to hear what questions you have and any additional ideas that you've had success with in using your ARP-HCY funds. In case you're not familiar with Schoolhouse Connection, we are so glad that you're here. We are a national nonprofit advocacy organization, and our mission is overcoming homelessness through education from prenatal to post-secondary. We work at this mission on a number of levels, including federal and state policy advocacy, K-12, early childhood, and higher education practical assistance, and we develop a number of tools and resources that we hope are useful to you all in the field. We always say the jewel in our crown is our network of young scholars who we are fortunate to support as they pursue their post-secondary education. And you can find out more about us on our website, schoolhouseconnection.org. We encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter, check out the Q&As from our inbox that we post there, and see if there are resources that can be helpful to you. Before we turn to our district liaisons today, I'm going to invite Barbara Duffield to give us a reminder and overview of ARP-HCY.
Good afternoon, everyone. So just a brief level setting in terms of the guidance from the U.S. Department of Education on the use of American Rescue Plan Homeless Children and Youth Funds. I hope by now everyone has seen this guidance, but just as a refresher, in early September, mid-September, the U.S. Department of Education issued a Dear Colleague letter to chief state school officers, and it did a number of really important things. First of all, it asks states to expedite the funding to help get it out there to meet the need, including by modifying administrative procedures. So this is in response to barriers that we've heard about, things like procurement rules and contracting and some of the bureaucratic layers that are getting in the way. So the letter asked states to do whatever they could to expedite the funding getting out there. So it's really important to get this guidance out as far and wide to superintendents, school business officers, and other administrators to make sure that they have it. It also went into more detail about the ways in which that ARP-HCY can be used specifically to meet the needs of students experiencing homelessness. So we're just going to highlight a couple here, some of the ones that maybe were clarified from previous guidance. So specifically, one of the clarifications in the guidance was that ARP-HCY funds can be used for motel stays of longer than 3 days if it's reasonable and necessary to allow children and youth to attend school, and as a last resort when other funding resources aren't available. So the April guidance from 2021 said 2 to 3 days. There's more detail now about, on a case-by-case basis, motel stays of longer than 3 days are allowable. So that's one thing that's could be new to you if you're hearing about it for the first time today. Also, the letter went into more detail about transportation, which we know is a huge need for children and youth who are experiencing homelessness, and clarified that ARP-HCY funds can be used for the purchase of vehicles, for specialized transportation, reimbursing parents and youth for gas costs, purchasing prepaid gas cards, and paying for limited car repairs if those costs are reasonable and necessary. And of course, all of this is case specific determinations, but that's one another big broad bucket that they clarified. Also clarified that food assistance is allowable with ARP-HCY, again, reasonable and necessary to assist students who are homeless to take advantage of education and extracurricular opportunities when food is not available through other sources. So if there isn't a not school meals, not another program there, for those reasons, food is an allowable use. And on the next slide, a couple we wanted to also call out a little bit more on early childhood. And actually, Erin, I'm going to ask you to present on this because I know this is a particular passion of yours.
Happy to. So thankfully, the Department of Education did clarify and emphasize that ARP-HCY funds can, in fact, be used to support the early childhood education of younger children aged birth to 5, those who are not yet school age and those who are not formally enrolled in the LEA, but who are experiencing homelessness within the LEA's boundaries. And they also elaborated that this could include activities to transition children to kindergarten, including coordination of developmental screenings that may be necessary, referrals to medical providers from your K-12 system to an early childhood program, activities to determine eligibility for childcare subsidy, as well as early intervention services. And importantly, this does include transportation to those services. And so those are examples of the allowable uses for ARP-HCY towards early childhood purposes that we want you all to be aware of.
And then just one more slide before we turn to our amazing presenters today, which is to highlight some of the uses that are specifically allowable related to the transition to post-secondary education. So certainly to assist youth and their parents or guardians to complete the FAFSA, which is going to be really important, particularly this year because there is a delay in the FAFSA. We won't be available till December, so we've got a crunch time with respect to FAFSA. Filling that out, other college readiness and college access activities, adding staff hours to provide for that assistance, paying for college application expenses like registration fees, entrance and placement exams, other fees that are associated with college applications. Also, either hiring graduation coaches or paying stipends to counselors for transcript audits to help with partial credits, ensuring students are on track. And we know of a number of districts that are doing amazing work with those credit audits. And then lastly, the paying stipends to counselors, again, partial credits and ensuring. So those are just some of the, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, it's an illustrative list. And some of the ones that we wanted to highlight because they went into a little bit more detail in September than what was provided in April. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Erin to moderate.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I do want to acknowledge we've already had some great questions come into the Q&A panel. I promise we will get to your questions. And I want to encourage folks to continue adding those questions to that Q&A pane. But now I want to invite our panelists, Leslie and Kathy, into the conversation. And we have a couple questions that we're going to walk through with both Leslie and Kathy to get out their examples of how they've been successful with using ARP-HCY. And Kathy, I want to start with you. And I would love for you to introduce yourself, tell us where your district is located, your district size, and the number of students you've identified.
Okay, I'm Kathy Scheffel. I'm the homeless liaison for Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia, and I've been in this role for 24 years, which shocks me every time I say that. We're a very large school system. We're the 10th largest in the country with about 185,000 students. And we typically, by the end of the year, have around 2,500 homeless students. Already this year, we're pretty close to 1,300, so our numbers are higher this year than our normal school year would be.
That's helpful. Thank you so much. And Leslie, I want to invite you in to do the same. Introduce yourself, tell us about your school district, its size, and your number of identified students.
Hi, my name is Leslie Navarro Walker, and I'm with the Cherry Creek School District, which lies in and around Denver, Colorado. Our enrollment is around 53,000 students. Last year, we ended up with about 954 McKinney-Vento identified students, but so far this year, we are already at about 730, so definitely seeing a large increase.
Thank you for that. And you've both already alluded to the fact that your identification numbers are increasing. Can you both share a little bit about how you do that identification? And Leslie, let's start with you.
Well, one really cool thing that we did with some of our funding is that we were able to hire a specific admission specialist that their sole purpose is to work with our McKinney-Vento families. That way she can take her computer and go to them to help them with their enrollment. But we've made sure to ensure that we are asking the correct questions upon enrollment. We hadn't been doing that well before, so we definitely made sure that those questions that we were asking the families were clear and concise, and so we could identify families. And we also, on our parent forms that all parents need to fill out prior to the beginning of the school year, we're asking the same questions so that we're able to find and identify those families and get them some resources.
That's very helpful. Great idea about the admissions personnel. And Kathy, same question to you. Would love for you just to share a little bit about how you go about identifying.
So we have a lot of pathways to identification because we have over 200 schools. So we have all of our school registrars trained to contact our office if a family indicates they're in any type of unstable housing, and we can complete a homeless assessment that way. It's part of our online registration for new families. There's a question in there about housing, and if you don't have permanent housing, it sends you over to us. All of our shelters are aware of our office and regularly email us, probably daily, with clients moving in, clients moving out, people calling for help. Our central registration office also has staff members there that have been trained by our office in McKinney-Vento, and we interface with them on a regular basis. And sometimes we go over to that office to assist with any families that may need help that way. So we have lots of different pathways to get to our office.
Thank you so much for that. And Kathy, I want to stick with you for this next question, and then we'll go back to you, Leslie. Would love to have you tell us about the needs that you're noticing among your students experiencing homelessness.
Well, I think since COVID, there's been an increase in basic needs assistance across the board: emergency food, medicine, dental care, medical care, all those basics, needing shoes, that kind of thing. So we are doing a lot of basic needs assistance. Our families speak many, many languages. We use translation services quite a bit, and I have 4 staff members that are Spanish speaking now that help with our newcomers that are speaking Spanish, or our new families to us. Lots of transportation needs seem to be constant with us, and we're large and we have a good public transportation system, but it's not sufficient for our homeless families. Either they don't know how to use it, or it doesn't go where they need to go. So we do a lot of transportation assistance. Our transportation department is very busy with our McKinney-Vento families, and they seem to be more mobile this year and last year than ever before. So the shelter stays are shorter, but the duration of homelessness is not shorter. So they're moving around a lot. So there's a lot of moving parts with transportation with our families to try to keep our kids in school and having good attendance. So that is the other focus this year that we've had, are really focusing on school attendance and what the barriers are for homeless families, and how we can reduce the amount of time that our homeless students miss school for reasons related to homelessness. That was a short answer on that.
I hear you. Thank you so much for that. And then Leslie, will turn to you to tell us about the needs of students experiencing homelessness in Cherry Creek, Colorado.
Very similar to hers. One thing I will add is, especially since COVID, a lot of social emotional learning and the need for a lot more mental health supports for the families as well as the students. So that's been a huge focus for us. Another thing is attendance. Because of that mobility, seeing some really concerning attendance. So that's how we are able to utilize the admission specialists to really focus on trends and that attendance piece, so that we can find out the why, to ensure that what is the nature and what barrier are popping up for them.
That's so helpful to hear. And Leslie, we'll stick with you for this next question. And you've both already alluded to some of this, but would love for you to share more about how you're using your ARP-HCY funds in particular to meet some of these needs.
So one really interesting thing is we were able to hire the admission specialist, but my coworker, who's actually on this call, hi, Katrina, we actually hired her to really hone in on our high school age students, because that's where we were seeing a lot of our unaccompanied youth that had been not identified in past years, but also really focusing on their attendance, really getting them on a pathway to where they want to be after, after high school. And she's been instrumental in really personalizing the interaction she has with those students, and creating some really special bonds with the families and the students, but making sure that these families know that she's there and that she cares. And that's been such a great use of these funds, because we're really seeing a lot of the data start coming out, showing that what she's doing really matters and really works.
That's amazing to hear. We're already having an influx of questions come into the Q&A panel. And so I want to stick with this conversation point, Kathy, and if you could talk a little bit more about how you're using your ARP-HCY funds.
Sure. So we're doing a lot of different things, and I'm sure I'm going to forget something, but I've hired some staff to focus on particular things. We're trying to sort of divide up our needs. So I've got one staff member that's working on post-secondary education and helping our juniors and seniors get ready for what they want to do after high school. She works with all of them individually, deadlines, applications, scholarships, grades, housing, shoes, whatever they need at that time, whatever the different, every student is different. So whatever their needs are at the time. And then we have somebody focusing on attendance. We have an attendance specialist. And as we're looking into this attendance issue for our homeless kids, we're finding things that we didn't know were there. For example, some of the children were not able to come to school because they didn't have clean clothes to wear. So we used our funds to pay for laundry. And we just found out that we can use our funds at a new laundromat, and they can bill us directly. So we don't have to be figuring out how do you give parent quarters and how do you use cash? And that doesn't really work for our kind of system. So we're working through these barriers and finding solutions for things like that. Needing dental care has been a recurrent theme. And so we were able to find some dentists and be able to pay some reduced fees, but to get some kids some, especially emergency dental care. Another thing is we're finding is that parents were not sure when to send their kids to school if they weren't feeling well after COVID. So we're buying thermometers and giving them more access to making that decision that their child can go to school. They're feeling a little bit better. They don't have COVID, or they're not, carrying something that they're going to share with their friends. So we're looking at all the different barriers and using our money to say, what can we do right now that we have these funds to try to help and see if we get some good data and get some good results. And I think we are. We're seeing more kids being able to go to school. The parents appreciate the support with the sick children care, what to do. We've also put together some little comfort kits for families if their kids aren't feeling well, so they have the tools they need at home to make the decision of when they can go back to school, and helping them access medical care when they need it for their children. Trying to think what else. We're focusing on early childhood too. We've been able to do a lot of educational materials at our shelters, and for our families that have families doubled up with them with little ones that need exposure to educational opportunities, and then also referrals to our early childhood programs and getting them in. And we're using a lot of that money for transportation to get parents to be able to participate in those programs that our community already offers, but they've always been there, but they couldn't get to them. So now we're using some of that money to get the parents to be able to come to these different programs, see what they'd like to do and what works for their family. Oh, and emergency transportation. I forgot about that. We're using our funds for that. So, if parents need to get to school or kids need to get home and they're sick at school, need to go home, we've been using some of our funds for that as well.
This is so wonderful to hear. Our questions keep pouring in. I have 2 more for our panelists, and then I promise our participants we are going to get to your questions for them as well. And Kathy, I want to stay with you for this next one, and then we'll go to you, Leslie. Would love to hear what other funding sources are available to you outside of ARP-HCY to be able to meet those needs of your students experiencing homelessness.
So we have been really fortunate. Our community is very generous, always has been very generous. And so our school system has a foundation, And the foundation has opened up an account for donations to help homeless students that we can use in our discretion. So prior to having this funding, we relied on that solely. And now we are able to use, this funding, but at some point we will be going back to that other funding. We've also been partnering with some of our community providers that were already providing things like food assistance by being able to help them get more food and then make our referrals, and they can in turn serve more of our families. So we have a lot of partnerships going on with community efforts within our existing support system in our community, if that makes any sense.
It does. That's super helpful. Thank you. And I love the strategy there. Leslie, same question for you. What other funding sources are available and how are you able to use them?
Definitely going to what she said too about the community-based organizations. It's really important for us to, keep and maintain those relationships because they've been super helpful. The other thing we're seeing that's working out is letting our grant team know what we do, who we are, what our purpose is, the students we help. And as grants pop up, they'll call us now, which is really great because we didn't have that before, but making sure that understanding's out there of what McKinney-Vento is has helped tremendously. So we do rely on that funding as well. And then our McKinney-Vento, the set aside, our McKinney-Vento set aside helps out a lot too, which we're still trying to tweak year by year, but we're finally getting somewhere. So I'm happy with that.
I forgot to mention that we have a wonderful McKinney-Vento set aside, as well as Title I funding and funding from our school system itself.
That's fantastic.
Similar type things. So
yes. And Leslie, I love your strategy of let other people in your district know who you are, know what the McKinney-Vento program is, so that grants team in particular can keep an eye out for other funding sources. And then Leslie, I want to stay with you to start for this last question. And then I promise our participants we're going to get to your questions. So thinking about sustainability, have you thought about sustaining some of these programs and initiatives beyond ARP-HCY, and what would you need in order to do that?
100%. That's kind of top of mind all the time because I don't want to lose what we've gained. So I think through our admissions support specialist, she's really shown the district and shown the admissions team that she is a valuable asset. It's also taken some work off of the regular admissions folks, that she can take on the McKinney-Vento families and work on them solely and make sure that they're processed in the correct way. So going forward, that is probably going to be split between the admissions budget and school-based, the school district budget. For Katrina's position with the high school age kiddos, our mental health team has taken such a great liking to our department, and they've kind of taken us in. So they are going to take over that portion to keep her. And they actually, the mental health team actually allowed for us to hire a brand new person that starts hopefully December 1st.
Congratulations. Staffing is huge, I know. That's wonderful to hear. And Kathy, same question for you. Thinking about sustainability, how are you thinking about that, and what would you need to sustain this work?
Well, I would not be telling the truth if I didn't say that I was terrified about the end of this funding, because I am. I mean, it's been so amazing to be able to offer so much supports to our families. So I am worried about it. I think anybody probably has the same feeling of, how are we going to keep this up? But I think that some of the results that we have are going to be a great launching place for additional funding from other sources. We're looking for those sources now. I think we're going to see good results with our attendance interventions, with our numbers of kids going on to higher ed. Just our overall academic success of our homeless students, I think will show at the end of the year when we can go back and look. But I am concerned a little bit about sustainability. I think that the positions that I have, I will probably be able to piece together somehow with existing funding, but the basic needs assistance is the biggest thing that we normally just don't have this robust amount of funding to do that. And I am concerned about how we're going to fill that gap.
On that note, I want to turn to our questions from participants, of which we have many starting to trickle in. And so, Leslie, I want to start with you for this first question. Someone said, Leslie mentioned hiring someone with your funds to be the main liaison or the main one working with families. Can you expand on that?
Both Katrina and I worked together to identify families. Where I placed her was mainly working with our high school population, as well as kind of honing in on those ninth graders that are those eighth graders that will be going into high school to ensure that smooth transition. We're very lucky that we're part of the EARS grant, and we have EARS partners that are focused on the dropout rate. So she's able to connect with them and really work on our McKinney-Vento students that way. I'm not sure if that's going to be a sustainable model. We are probably going to go to, because we're so large, to go to a per feeder. So we'll have certain liaisons over certain feeders. But I think it set the stage for both like middle and high school counselors to take a look at our McKinney-Vento families differently, our kiddos, to ensure their success after high school.
That's super helpful. Thank you for that. I want to offer the next question to both of you. We have a couple people interested in expanding on any attendance initiatives you've been able to do with your ARP-HCY funding.
I can tell you a little bit about what we're doing. So we have a wonderful attendance specialist who's a social worker that's been with our district for a long time. And we created a referral system for basically if a student is having an attendance issue and also is homeless, after the school has done what they normally would do for intervention, then the referral comes to our office and our staff member contacts the people who've been working with the family to find out what have you already done, because we don't want to repeat, and then take it from there. And it involves a lot of case by case meeting with the parent, sometimes meeting them not at the school and not where they're staying. So at a McDonald's or Starbucks or wherever the parent is comfortable, and building a relationship and figuring out what the barriers are for the family and for the kids. And it's time consuming, but very effective. So we have learned all kinds of things that we didn't know were the barriers, that were not obvious to anybody, and have been able to slowly build relationships with our families and parents and schools together so that we could overcome some of those barriers.
And really quickly, Kathy, if I could follow up, can you say a little bit more about what those barriers are that you said weren't necessarily obvious before?
Sure. Not having basic needs is a constant theme, and we don't really know that till we really find out what's going on. They don't have clean clothes, or they just don't have clothes. They didn't have shoes. They didn't have coats. They didn't have any of the things they needed. Sometimes it's logistics. There are maybe 5 kids in the family, and the mom just can't quite figure out how to get everybody where they need to be and how this is all going to work. So we do just some listening and problem solving, like you would with a friend. What do you have going on here, and how can we help you figure this out? Sometimes they are kind of stuck in different bureaucracies and they're not sure how to untangle those things, maybe with housing, maybe with legal, maybe with immigration, whatever it may be. There's agencies involved that make things overwhelming for the family, and it's impacting the kids' ability to go to school. That's some of them.
Yeah, I hear you. That's super helpful. Thank you so much. Leslie, I want to pose the same question to you around the attendance issue in particular and how you've been able to address that.
So through that position through admissions, what she did is created a report that gets sent to each principal that lists their students that are on McKinney-Vento. We always preface it by saying, follow FERPA guidelines, everything like that. But one thing we highlight is their attendance. So it's all there, vivid. So you could say, oh, hey, they are having some issues with attendance. And then we work together with the school to overcome those barriers. And sometimes it's, hey, this is the situation. What can we do with the school in order to make this easier and remove those barriers for those families? It's been, I will say, in all truthfulness, our school district used to be very affluent. And so the mindset has had to shift. So it's taken some time to shift. So by creating that report and having it came down today, first of every month. It's really focused the attention on the kiddos that need the support. So it's helped a lot in opening some eyes.
That's super helpful to hear. I have a few other questions that are directly related to what you all both shared. So I want to get through those first. And then there are some other questions that I'm sure you both can talk towards, but then I want to invite in our schoolhouse team to address some of those more broadly as well. Kathy, there's a lot of interest in the comfort kits that you mentioned. If you would be willing to share what's in those.
Sure. Well, they had soup and thermometers and COVID tests and throat lozenges and Gatorade and some other things that you would eat or drink when you're sick. A CVS gift card if you needed to get stuff from the pharmacy. Trying to think what else was in there. Oh, a pulse oximeter because it was during COVID. We were checking on that. Cough drops, tea, honey. I think I covered most of it in a kind of a big bag, and we delivered them to the school. And if the student was sent home sick, either with suspected COVID or with COVID, they left with that bag, took it with them.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I want to navigate us through some other broader questions now that, like I said, I know you two have experience in, and so want to give you first right of refusal to answer these, and then want to invite in our schoolhouse team to respond to some of them as well. We have as usual, we have a couple questions around the use of gift cards, purchasing and tracking. And so want to invite both of you to talk through if and how you're able to do that, any specific tools or tactics that you're able to use, specifically knowing that sometimes business offices are a little wary. And so if you found success getting around those concerns.
I can take a jab at this. We call them store cards instead of gift card because that helps a little bit with it. But we buy them in bulk, so that's easy for us to do. And we keep a spreadsheet. It's very simple: student name, parent name, what they need, what we're giving them, and then what community resource we've referred them to for ongoing assistance. So we can kind of take a look and see what we've done and where we're headed. And we do a handoff to a community resource every time. It's just that it's not always as efficient, or the parent can't get there, barriers come up. But we also do gas assistance for parents to get to important appointments that relate to their children being able to successfully go to school, medical, dental, mental health, all of that, as well as the regular grocery stores and Target, Walmart, that kind of thing. We've also been able to buy some bedding and sleeping assistance for some of our kids that were sleeping on the floor, and it turned out that was the barrier to going to school. So we were using our store cards for that also.
That's super helpful. Leslie, anything to add on the store card issue?
Very similar, just keeping very consistent spreadsheet. I share it with an assistant superintendent, so there's eyes on it, so the accountability piece is there. When I do get the receipts, if they're donating it, I keep all the receipts. I keep everything I can just to go back on that.
That's super helpful. Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge in the chat, we had a few participants ask about the receipt piece of this. I do want to say that every single district's policy is a little bit different. Some do require receipts to the dollar and cent for every single gift card. Kathy's shaking her head, nope, not me. Move to Fairfax is what I'm hearing.
We wouldn't be able to do it if we were doing, we wouldn't be able to, we just have so many kids. But I do want to say that if there's ever a concern that the card would not be used appropriately, which doesn't happen very often, if there ever would be a concern, we can order ourselves for what the student needs and have it, presented to them at school or presented to the parent or delivered to the parent.
Yeah.
So we don't have any concerns about that at this time.
That's great to hear. We always encourage folks to check with your district policy first. We also have some resources on the Schoolhouse website. One in particular is called Flexing the Flexibility of ARP-HCY, and it's solely about store cards. And we have some other district examples in there as well if you need ideas for that tracking piece. I want to shift us into some more broad questions and put our Schoolhouse team on notice here. Particularly, Barbara, you might have some ideas to weigh in on the next two questions that I want to ask. The first one is around vehicles, and the second one is around using ARP-HCY for rent cost. So let's talk vehicles first. Want to first invite Kathy and Leslie, if you have any experience using ARP-HCY funds to purchase vehicles, want to give you the opportunity to share about that.
I do have experience, and it was an utter nightmare. We definitely needed a vehicle because our district spans over 108 square miles. Like it's a huge area with different municipalities. We thought a vehicle would be an amazing idea. The problem is that our district only deals with Ford because we only have Ford mechanics that we're able to use, and everything is on back order. So our plans have stalled. So we're hoping to get said vehicle, but we did it to where you didn't need like a commercial license so that, you know, more people could utilize it when needed.
And we have not bought any vehicles yet, but the year is young. So it's my backup plan if there's money that needs to be spent before the very end of the school year.
That's great. We call that the spirit of possibilities at Schoolhouse. And I love that you said that. I'll chime in and say, first of all, Leslie, that is the first I've heard of a particular brand restriction. I understand the concern there about having mechanics who can tend to those vehicles. Something else we've heard pop up in terms of considerations, if you do, or if you are in a position to purchase a vehicle, think about the associated cost in terms of who will drive this vehicle and the insurance. Someone in our questions mentioned, you know, what's the insurance? Again, I encourage you to check with your district policy. I know a lot of districts prohibit the use of personal vehicles to transport certain age groups. And so we definitely encourage you to check with your district policy, but we do want to emphasize that the purchase of vehicles is allowable with your ARP-HCY funds. And then I don't know, Barbara, if you have anything else to add on the vehicle issue.
Just to say that will be a feature of one of the future sessions. We're going to keep doing these sessions every 2 weeks. And so not the next week one, but the end of November, we'll specifically focus on districts who've been able to do that for specialized transportation, and particularly in rural areas where it can be really transformative. And Karen, I think maybe was going to add something in the chat too, maybe. It's all right.
I was going to say something really quick. What we did is we partnered with our transportation folks through the Colorado Department of Education, as well as our district transportation folks. So it's been a very big collaborative effort so that we've been able to cover everything from insurance to who can drive it. And we're setting up our own policies around said vehicle so that we're all in like a collaborative conversation regarding it.
That's great to hear. Let me stick on the vehicle purchase for just a minute. I just saw a question come into the chat asking, was the vehicle bought for staff usage or was it for a specific family? And so I don't know. I think maybe that's generally because we heard Leslie was not successful with her vehicle purchase. Kathy's got it on the back burner. I do know that in other districts, the vehicle has been purchased. In one case, I'm thinking of the district staff person is able to drive the vehicle and pick up multiple students experiencing homelessness. And you also want to think about making sure we're not stigmatizing. You know, if there's a big logo that says homeless student transportation and it's just one student, that's certainly something you want to avoid. And thank you, Karen, our senior program manager, for putting the link in the chat to our transportation resource that might have other ideas. So I want to go to our next question, and Barbara, I'm going to go to you first, but certainly invite Kathy and Leslie to chime in with any examples you have from your district. We had a couple questions come in. One asked, will rental assistance ever be something we can use this money for, like first month's rent, if there's a good plan in place for the family to be able to afford going forward? And the second question around can we use the money for rental assistance, like first month's rent and deposit? So Barbara, would love for you to address that one.
The U.S. Department of Ed has been quite clear that for these funds, they do not consider it to be a housing program, and they would not allow funds to be used for that purpose. There are other school districts across the country who are, for example, in Washington State, where there's the Homeless Student Stability Program, and it's actually a state-funded program that provides for housing-related costs, including for that. So some states, and there's interest in having more programs like Washington State's Homeless Student Stability Program. And then in some cases, there is a philanthropic support or arrangements between the housing authority and the school district that aren't related to ARP-HCY funds. But short answer is that that is not going to happen with these funds. And I didn't know what the longer answer was. I had something else that was longer, but it was, but not with ARP-HCY, but certainly possible with state and philanthropic support.
And one quick follow-up on ARP-HCY, what about housing application fees?
That's a very interesting question.
Yeah.
Service navigation, we know, and housing navigation are eligible uses. There are definitely districts that are using it for those purposes. We will get back to the questioner about that one, because we also don't want to mislead where we don't have certainty.
Absolutely. And then thank you very much, Barbara. And then Kathy and Leslie, just want to give you the opportunity if there's anything else you'd like to add that you've seen in your districts on the housing assistance piece. Leslie's not touching that one. Got it. Thank you very much. I know that's a tough one. Okay. I am scrolling through our questions, and there continue to be more questions coming in. And so I'm trying to be strategic here and make the most use of the time that we have with Kathy and Leslie. And so wanna turn a little bit back to student data. There was a question that came in that says, do you have per student data around how much the cost is to adequately serve youth experiencing homelessness? I know it varies case by case, but wondered if you do a year-end average based on expenditure and McKinney-Vento student numbers.
We do not, but that is an excellent point. I love that idea to do something like that, but as of yet, we do not.
We don't either, and I suspect it would vary quite a bit depending on the student and the need and everything, where they are housed and how long they're there. I mean, there's an awful lot of variables there. You know, some of our most expensive costs have to do with transportation to keep our kids in their school of origin. You know, it's very costly if we're using car services and things, you know, daily. But there are other expenses as well. But I think transportation is probably one of the biggest.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for that. And thank you to that participant for posing that question and idea. I want to stick with ARP-HCY, and we always have questions come in, and had a question come in about the bidding process. This participant says in our district, whenever we use ARP-HCY funds, we need to do bids. Is that a similar process with your districts? And how do you, I'm seeing Leslie say yes, and Kathy saying no.
It depends on what it is, but yes, there is, especially around that vehicle. That's definitely yes.
Yep. And I know similarly in other districts, there's a threshold perhaps that different departments have to go through. If it's over a certain amount, you have to put it out for bid. Kathy, I don't know if that's similar to what happens in Fairfax.
It is, and we try to not go over the threshold because it's just so time consuming I mean, we are a limited staff. But if we are ordering gigantic orders of school supplies and that kind of thing, we have vendors we are approved for us to use and that kind of thing.
That's helpful. I want to scroll through our questions here. There are a couple, I'm going to take facilitator's privilege here. There are a couple of questions about birth to 5 younger siblings. And so I want to make sure we're answering that. Again, the Department of Education did emphasize in their updated Dear Colleague letter that you may use your ARP-HCY funds for early childhood programs. And not only is it allowable, but we like to remind people that it is a required duty of liaisons at the district level to ensure that younger children are both identified and referred to early childhood development programs. We had a question that says, we are a high school only district. Can we help the younger siblings of our students? And my answer is not only can you, but you absolutely should, in terms of identifying those younger siblings and helping to ensure that they are referred and connected to an early childhood development program. Again, encourage you to check with your district and state policies about, we had another question about recording that data. All districts and states should be recording the identification of younger siblings, and that gets reported to the U.S. Department of Education every year. And that is how we are able to provide data and estimates on the number of young children aged birth to 5 who are experiencing homelessness and served in various settings. And then Kathy and Leslie, if you have anything to add about how you navigate the early childhood needs in your districts, would love to hear that.
Well, reminded me that we have a lot of homeless students that are parents. So we have been able to buy strollers and car seats and things that these young parents need to help them be able to get to school and get their kids where they need to be for childcare during the day. So we've never been able to do that before, and that's been really helpful for our young parents.
For us in Colorado, we just started universal pre-K under the governor. So every child gets 10 free hours a week of preschool. So we have a lot of preschools within our elementary schools and a couple of standalones. And it's been really interesting to try to navigate because it's a separate team that works with them. So it's a lot of having to come together and make sure that they are aware of the resources that are there. But in their enrollments with us, we ask them the very similar questions as we do with the K-12 ones. So we're making sure to ask those questions to our pre-K families in order to get them the resources they need and knock down any barriers.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you both so much for that. I will put in another plug. We do have a Flexing the Flexibility series on early childhood and how you can use your ARP-HCY funds to make those connections. I'm scrolling through our questions here. And Barbara, I'm gonna put you on notice again because we have a question asking about, have you heard if unspent ARP-HCY funds can be extended an extra grant year?
Okay. So this is wonky. Thanks, Erin. There is a process called extended liquidation that allows for funds that were properly obligated. Funds have to be obligated by September 30th, 2024. That's in the statute. That can't be changed. Congress is not willing to change it, bluntly. But there is something called extended liquidation where if funds were properly obligated before September 30th, 2024, they could be, the liquidation could be an additional, I think, 12 or 14 months. States have to apply for that, and they have to apply, and the districts have to apply for the state for that process. The U.S. Department of Education has said that it will make a frequently asked question document about that process, what it looks like, what's included, what's not included, available before the end of the year, maybe by the end of November. We're waiting along with everybody else to see when that will be put out. But that would be a really important option to have so that things like store cards and gas cards could be used for an additional 12 months into 2026. So stay tuned. The minute we know, he will be blasted out far and wide. But again, the state has to apply to the Department of Ed for that. And there's a process by which the states get information from districts for that. And that's about as clear as I can make it for now.
Thank you very much. I want to offer a toss-up to this knowledgeable group. The question is, can you purchase furniture such as bed or emergency assistance for utility bills and or tutor sent to where the family is staying? So want to offer that as a toss-up to anyone who has examples or thoughts on that.
We do have tutors that meet our kids wherever they need to be met for tutoring. We do not pay for utilities. We haven't done that, but we have bought some sleeping assistance, either blow up bed or, you know, a mattress that they can take with them, and bedding and pillows and towels for that matter for students.
That's helpful. Thank you, Kathy. Leslie, I wanted to give you a chance to chime in, but if not, we're happy to move to the next.
Same with the blow up mattresses, but we're lucky since we're in such a large area. We do have several community-based organizations that help with the furniture. We don't help with utilities, but we do help with tutoring.
That's great to hear. There's another question, and I think there are two slices to this question. This one came in when Barbara was going over ARP-HCY uses for higher ed and talking about college counseling, but I think there's also interest in mental health counseling. And so I'm going to offer this one as a toss-up too, because time is never on our side and we are down to 10 minutes. And so we'd love for you all to chime in on if you have used funds, ARP-HCY or other, to pay for counseling costs or just the referral process for college counseling and or mental health counseling.
We haven't needed to use these funds for that. We're able to get the services to our students another way.
Same here. We have a way to get the counseling to our families through other means. So
got it. That's
and we do know we do have there are districts, and I believe some of the examples on our website of school districts who have contracted with community-based organizations to bring counseling and mental health services to the school site. I believe it was a Rhode Island school district. If you go on our part of our website, you'll see spotlights, and that's one. We also have some that are focusing specific on mental health for students who are experiencing homelessness and who are also immigrant students who have additional layers of trauma, and some for expanding hours for school-based mental health services specifically for students. So there are definitely districts who are doing that, and we hope to feature them on future sessions too.
I want to turn to this question that asks, are there funds that can be used or applied for to support Black and Brown McKinney-Vento students? And so I'm wondering, Kathy and Leslie, if you could talk to how you've identified some of the needs of your McKinney-Vento students of color and how you've been able to address those, whether you're Black McKinney-Vento students, Hispanic, immigrant, migrant. Would love to hear you talk about those intersectionalities.
So with our district, we have our own equity and cultural engagement. So we try to, instead of working in silos, pull them together, which has been super, super helpful. Have we done a wonderful job? Yes, but we need to do more. But we've kept it within the district and utilizing our own resources within our district to help.
I would say my answer is the same as Leslie's too. We have a strong equity initiative within Fairfax County Public Schools that's for all students, and our homeless students are included in any of the needs they may have that way.
That's great to hear. And I'll just add that we do have a resource on Schoolhouse's website about the importance of partnering with community-based organizations who are led by people of color in your community. And so we encourage you to check that out, particularly to help build that trust where it might not already exist with the school system. We have a few more questions and we have a few more updates and announcements to share. So I want to assure our participants that we will follow up via email with you. We have your information, have no fear, and we will provide responses to those questions. My colleague Karen, thank you so much, Karen, has been putting links in the chat to some of our existing resources. We will also post this session along with the slides that we shared earlier to our website. You can go to schoolhouseconnection.org and go to our archived webinars page. Before you leave today, I'm going to share my screen again because we have just a few reminders and resources to share with you. Sorry, it is hard for me to click and talk at the same time. We have just a few additional resources that we would guide your attention to. The first is that updated Dear Colleague letter. We have a special page on our website dedicated to that. It has a link to the Department of Education's Dear Colleague letter, along with some of our examples and resources to use there. Our American Rescue Plan Homeless Children and Youth resource page is chock full of information and highlights from districts across the country. And then, of course, that Flexing the Flexibility series that we've mentioned a few times now. All of this is on our website, and you will get the slides with these links in a follow-up email as well. I want to pause for a minute here because I'm hoping that you all will take the opportunity to use this QR code and access our liaison survey. We want to hear from you. This is a survey that will take a little bit less than 10 minutes to complete. The survey will be open through November 21st, so you have time to complete it, and this will not be the last time you hear from us about it. Barbara, anything else you want to add about the survey?
Yeah, this is specifically about ARP-HCY funds. We are doing this because we can ask questions that maybe our partners at the U.S. Department of Education can't ask. This information is directly used to shape our advocacy that we do. It was a survey like this in 2020 that was the basis for getting ARP-HCY funds. So we timed it. You don't need to look anything up. It takes less than 10 minutes, and we'd love your help. So thank you.
Awesome. So please do check that out. Like I said, you'll get these slides, which has a link to the survey, and you'll hear from us again in an email asking you to complete this survey. Also want to mention, if you know any college-bound students who have experienced homelessness, we encourage you to have them apply for the Schoolhouse Connection Scholarship Program. You can see that that scholarship includes a $2,500 financial award, one-on-one support with our amazing youth leaders and scholars team, and 3 all-expense-paid trips. And it's a really incredible opportunity to support our students experiencing homelessness as they pursue their post-secondary education and their independence in the world. And you can see where you can apply, schoolhouseconnection.org/scholarship. Let's please stay connected. You can find us in a lot of places, including Facebook. We have a special group on homelessness and education. You can follow us on Instagram, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and we're on LinkedIn as well. So we encourage you to find us there. We always post updates, short video clips, resources, tools, and everything in between. So we encourage you to check us out and sign up for our mailing list. We send out an e-blast about once a week, and it includes all of these resources we've mentioned, as well as some Q&As that come into our inbox that we want to publish responses for so that everyone can benefit from that knowledge. Before we end the session today, I want to offer tremendous thanks to Leslie and Kathy, not just for sharing your expertise with us today, but for everything you are doing every single day on the ground to support students experiencing homelessness in your districts and communities. We so appreciate the work that you're doing, and thank you for being here and answering questions from our participants today. Like we mentioned, this will be posted on our archived webinars page, where you can also find information about the future installments of this series that we will be conducting. And the next one will be November 15th, same time, same place. And we look forward to seeing you then. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.